So you want to know the ins and outs of managing your money. Well, lucky for you, you're just in time for another episode of Master Your Finances with certified financial planner professional Kurt Baker. Kurt and his panel of experts are here for you and will cover topics from a legal and personal standpoint. They'll discuss tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider offers continuing studies programs for adults who need flexibility. Want to add new skills to your resume? Take a continuing studies course at Rider University. Now, let's learn how we can better change our habits with Kurt Baker.
You want to gain a better understanding of the cannabis industry? You want to gather information to determine whether the cannabis industry is of interest to you in terms of business, investment, and/or employment? Nick Scalera is the founder and CEO of NJ Cannabis Consulting, a company that assists entrepreneurs and businesses interested in entering the legal recreational cannabis market. He will assist you in understanding the numerous challenges that may lie ahead, as well as determining whether opportunities are appropriate for you. Today, he will instill confidence in you that you are making sound decisions. All right. This is something that's been going on for, I guess, a while. I mean, I remember, maybe at least 20 years ago, they're talking about legalizing cannabis, and then I guess we got into the point where we did it for medicinal purposes, right. And then some states picked that up, and I guess, what was it? I believe Colorado was the first one to really come on board with this, right?
Yeah, they were the pioneers for sure.
And then it's just been kind of slowly but surely moving its way across the country, and New Jersey's a relatively new entry into this new recreational cannabis being legal, which of course has some pros and cons to it, which we can debate later. But you want to explain a little bit about your journey and how you ended up at this point in time, because sure. We look like we're similar ages, so you may have had a little bit of a background on this, right?
I'm much older.
Okay, all right.
So actually, I was, excuse me, I was a technical guy starting out, and worked at Bell Laboratories, and actually later got a master's in computer science from Stevens, and then mid-career, I got some advice that with a technical background, I could do really well in the business end of technical companies. So I did do that. I went on and got an MBA. And then from there on, it was more business-oriented kinds of jobs that I had with AT&T and other big companies, PerkinElmer and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then about 20 years ago or so, I happened to be working for a .com that went out of business right after 9/11, as many of them did, and decided to hang out a shingle as a small business consultant, essentially. So I was doing business plans and marketing plans for the most part, market research, competitive analysis, that kind of thing for the most part, small businesses, although once in a while I'd get a job to do some mystery shopping for AT&T or somebody like that. And then it was more than 5 years ago when Phil Murphy was running for governor, and he was talking about expanding the medical program and getting into legalization of adult use in New Jersey. And I thought about it a minute, and I thought this could be interesting. And there's a saying among consultants that chaos breeds opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I knew there would be a lot of chaos here, and there certainly has been for sure. And I remember at the time speaking with my wife and talking about it, trying to make the decision whether I ought to focus on this industry or not. And she said, well, at least you'll have some interesting stories.
I'm sure that's true.
And that has absolutely been the case.
Okay.
There's many of those kinds of stories. So
right.
I developed an educational seminar, and took it on the road, went to public libraries and chambers of commerce, and joined a trade association right here in New Jersey, the New Jersey Cannabis Association. Started going to the networking events, and what I found was that there were quite a few, as we say, subject matter experts, of which I was not,
right.
But there were very few people who really understood the business side of it. So sure enough, I did find some other folks to work with. First, I helped out on other people's financials, their pro formas and things like that. In New Jersey, they have now a very well-organized way that you have to submit an application, and one of the things that you have to do is a business plan and a pro forma. And in many cases, you also need a pitch deck to show to the town, and we'll talk about that a bit more, to get their approval and or investors. So that's how I got into it, and that's what I've been doing for the last, well, just celebrated a 5th anniversary. My son put together a website for me, and I get a lot of hits, as you can imagine. I educate a lot of people on the pros and the cons, and making the smartest choice. And for a lot of people, the smartest choice is it's not for them. And I wind up talking a lot of people out of it.
Yeah, there's a lot to this. I mean, you were here from the very, very beginning, and I remember there were a lot of hurdles. I mean, I remember just getting this thing negotiated. In fact, I think everybody was quote on board at the legislature level, and then they never seemed to pass it. I remember it just seemed like it took a lot longer than people thought. Because I know that just from the usage side, because I mean, once you open up cannabis, and we won't spend a lot of time, we'll touch on just briefly, is there's pros and cons, right? So if you have an industry that's underground, then people are just going to do it anyway, and then you're not going to see what's going on, and now you have to access and figure out what the heck's going on. But then when you legalize something like this, you're like, okay, well, now it's in the open, it's legal. Now are you going to promote additional use? But that also means you've got additional access to services, because now in theory the services should know where the people are. So kind of like alcohol, right? I mean, you went through Prohibition and we hit it, but yeah, people are still going down to the speakeasies in the basement and still drinking. They just, it wasn't public. They couldn't talk about it.
And a lot of people became blind.
Right.
Because again, once the regulations were off,
right,
then people were making it in their bathtub and things like that. And to a certain extent, that's true now.
Right.
The what they call the legacy market or the black market is still there, and it will be there for sure, but there are certain risks associated with that. I mean, there's plenty of anecdotes where people have gotten something in there that shouldn't have been there, and there were health issues, and of course you don't know what kind of pesticides have been used on it and so forth. So the one benefit of having a legal system is that the product is now tested scrupulously by the state and the testing agencies and so forth, so you know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah, and I recall I went to a workshop that the chamber had, and I don't know, you might have been there, but there was one person who got involved in it because I guess his brother was a doctor, and he was looking for consistency in the THC content because it was variable for a period of time. So how can I prescribe something? I don't know exactly what I'm really prescribing to them because it changes based on the production. So literally he went into the business to make sure he had consistency in the product that was being delivered because he was doing it for medicinal purposes in his case. And so I guess the same rings true for, if you're going to use it, at least understand what you're using and understand what you got exactly.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the argument that goes on. I'm sure that debate will continue forever. But so how did this start in the beginning as far as like what you saw? Because you were on the consulting side of this, like before it actually came. So what did you kind of see through this process, and how do we get to the point now where it is legal to do this, and now we've got processes and places to open the business? Can you take us through a little bit of the history of how all that worked?
Sure. Well, we were on the sidelines for quite a while until New Jersey figured out what they were going to do. And sure enough, they did visit other places, Colorado, California, some of the folks that had been through this before, and with the idea that they would develop best practices for implementation here. So every state, of course, is different, and New Jersey implemented its program much differently than the other states. We also work with people in New York. They're doing it, again, completely differently, different orientation, different focus, and so forth. But they write the rules, and so in New Jersey, when they finally did get around to, first they put it in the lap of us, so we voted on it, and 67% of the voters voted to legalize adult use. And then the legislature got involved, had to figure out what kind of laws they would pass. There were a few failed attempts to put something in front of the governor that he would accept. He finally did. And when he did, now we needed the infrastructure to make this all happen. So they set up something called now the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. They folded the medical program under it. They set the rules and regulations. They have commissioners. They're also responsible for ensuring that all folks that have licenses are complying with the regulations. There is, by the way, 24/7 video monitoring of all the locations, and all of that information gets fed to someplace in the CRC so that they can monitor exactly what's going on. It's a very strictly regulated operation, to be sure.
Yeah, you mentioned licensing real quick, and I know that
Sure.
it's not like you just get a cannabis license in New Jersey, right? There's different types of licensing. You want to walk through a little bit
Sure.
of how that works, the licensing aspect, and
Sure.
what types of licenses there are?
Right. Well, first of all, you can get a different type of license depending on the kind of business. So there is a cultivation license, there's a processing or manufacturing license, there's a retail license, there's also a testing license. There will be others that are coming. They were in the works for wholesale and distribution and delivery. One thing to note, that delivery is just like Uber in that there's no selling involved, so you just take it from point A and bring it to point B.
Oh, okay. So they're just literally moving the product.
Exactly.
So in theory, Uber might be like licensed to do this at some point.
They could,
Okay.
for sure. Okay. Then there's also different, I'll call them levels of license. So the key here is that the town, whatever town it has to be, any of the 565 municipalities in New Jersey, and they're all doing it a little differently because they have total control over what goes on in their town. So in my town, your town, they can determine the kind of cannabis business that can operate there, if any. They may very well say they may opt out of the program entirely and say no. And by the way, they can change their mind anytime. They can opt in, they can opt out, they can change the regulations, and all of that happens. So the town does have to provide support with the application, has to be a letter of support, and obviously you have to have a location where this is going to work. It has to be the right size, has to be, again, the location that the town specifies, and there is even some state regulations in terms of distance from schools and daycares and things like that. And you will see here, as well as many other places, that the fact that cannabis is still illegal at the federal level has a ripple effect. And in the case of real estate, the FDIC, as a federal agency, will not allow, quote, illegal operations on any place that has an FDIC mortgage.
Oh, wow.
Which many places, many mortgages
Sure.
are. So that can be a sticking point as well. So again, that's one of the things we counsel folks when you go look at a property, make sure that the owner of the property does not have an FDIC mortgage.
Oh, interesting. Wow. That's what's fascinating. We're going to pick right back up. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I'm here with Nick Scalera, and we're talking about the cannabis industry, which is relatively new as far as recreational goes here in New Jersey. We had medicinal purchases a few years back, and now Governor Murphy opened it up. Now it's, I guess through the voting, right? 67% of the voters said, yep, that's okay. So the voters said okay. The legislature, after a few back and forths with the governor, they came up with the rules. And a lot of that sounds like it pushed down to the township level where they have a lot of control. So there's a lot of levels of control, and they're monitoring this very, very carefully. So it sounds like, yes, it's available. It's also being watched really, really closely because, as we all know, there's pros and cons to this whole thing going on. And you touched on this a little bit beforehand. Now, of course, it's legal in New Jersey, plus I guess roughly about half the states, right? Somewhere in that range, I think.
Yeah, 39 states now
It's
have
even more
medical
than that.
programs.
Wow.
Right?
So,
and maybe 13 or 14 now, depending on the last elections.
Okay.
How many have adult use?
okay, so we're way beyond the halfway point now. So this is really literally coming across the country. However, as you point out in the last segment, federally, this is still illegal. So if I know that, if I'm a bank, right? Let's say if I'm a federally chartered bank, how can I do business with a business that's illegal? Whereas if I'm a state chartered bank, maybe I can. I mean, can you explain,
Sure.
how do I, as a company, maybe have a merchant account where I can take your credit card as an example, or can I?
Right.
I mean, how does all that work?
Right. So this, again, part of the trickle-down effect of the fact that it's still illegal at the federal level, legal in many cases with the states. The feds have taken a kind of look the other way attitude on it. Again, we're United States of America. There are states' rights, so the states are allowed to implement whatever program they want in this regard. The feds are not bothering them, other than the fact that any federal agency that's impacted by this business is going to have something to say about it. So we talked about the FDIC. Another is the IRS. The IRS says if you are a cannabis business, where you have to fill out your taxes in a different way. A lot of the costs are not going to be allowable. So there's something called 280E, which is a provision of the tax code that makes it much more expensive to run a cannabis business because you can't deduct as many expenses as you can another business. There's an issue with banking, credit cards, and so forth. The issue with the banks is that they can, in fact, handle cannabis businesses, but there are many requirements in terms of regulation for the government. So many of them have decided as a business decision that they do not want to incur all the additional work that's going to be required to do that. So that's a business decision. Some, by the way, have more recently decided we're going to take that on. We're not going to leave money on the table. We want to get into this business. And there are a few banks, even in New Jersey, that will handle cannabis accounts. However, they are more expensive.
Okay.
Okay, because they're recognizing the fact that they have to spend a lot more time and effort to comply with the government regulations. Obviously, they need to pass some of that expense on to the consumer, in this case, the business owner.
So can I get a credit? Can I get a merchant account through these banks? So the bank opens
Yes.
up the system. So are these? So you're saying that it's look the other way. So if I'm a federally chartered bank, that you're seeing still, regardless of charter, they're still like your big banks are doing this as well as the small banks?
Not too many big banks. Mostly
Okay.
the small banks, the independent banks, the credit unions.
Okay, credit unions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's again, a moving target. People in the industry know the banks that are doing it. We have contacts, for example, in the various banks. So when people ask us, as they often do, who can we go to for security? Who can we go to for real estate? Who can we go to for banking? We have those names. We do an introduction to them and help them out that way.
Okay, so you have the banking side of it. The merchant account is fine, right? So I can put the deposits in there. I can run an account. It's just going to cost me more money because of the compliance issue.
Exactly.
Now, what about things like insurance? Obviously, I want to be insured. How is that looked at? Because this might be a slightly higher risk than if I own a flower shop, right?
Sure. What's happening is that many companies either are springing up to serve the cannabis business or are creating divisions to address the cannabis business. This is a new market segment. You know, in many cases, they were going along fat, dumb, and happy, and all of a sudden, here comes this new market segment. Well, let's take advantage of it. So,
Right.
And these are legal firms, CPA firms, insurance companies. You will find specialists in every area now, security companies, where all they do, or a major division of them, all they do is cannabis. And there are insurance requirements, obviously. And it depends on the type of business. For example, if you're doing delivery, you have to have insurance to cover the driver and things like that.
Okay, so it's a little bit more involved. Okay, but it can be done. It sounds like this.
Everything can be done.
Okay. Well, at this point, I remember early on, that wasn't always the answer. It was
Right.
like I remember them talking about how huge amounts of cash were sitting in Colorado, and they didn't know what to do. They were subject to robbery because they couldn't put it in a bank account. They didn't know like where they're going to put the money.
Yeah.
And I guess finally this stuff got figured out because somebody saw that stack of cash there and figured, well, let's find a way to work through this, and maybe we can find a solution. And obviously they have found solutions.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
All right, so good. They found a solution. So can we walk through a little bit about, like, if I'm coming to you as a consultant and I want to set up one of these businesses, I just recall that, like, if you were to build a facility for one of these, I mean, one of the things I remember was, okay, I want to get approval for a license, but then I need to show them the location where I want to be. But then on the other hand, my landlord, I have to sign a lease, but I don't have a license to open the business. So I'm in this catch-22 between securing a location and getting approval for my license to use the location, which I don't really have yet because you haven't given me the license so I can open my business. So you got kind of this gap where
Yep.
how am I going to, like, I can't operate yet, right? So,
Right.
but I'm spending money. So how does
Right.
this kind of impact my planning, so to speak?
It is complicated,
Okay.
for sure. And people have come up with very interesting kinds of solutions. The brute force one is you go to a location that's within an area in a town that either has been approved or will be approved, and you make an arrangement with the property owner, or you buy the property. Mm-hmm. And the arrangement is whatever works for you both.
Right.
And there's a wide variety of different kinds of things that can happen. He can go or she can go month to month with somebody with the provision that he or she will throw them out.
Right.
When you have your license. You may pay for that privilege. You can lease it and leave it bare or sublease it. That's another arrangement. But again, the realtors and the brokers have done something like this before, and they have a lot of ingenuity going on to figure out creative ways that make everybody happy.
Okay, so the solutions for that too, you just have to work
Yes.
it out and determine what to do about it. So, is there when I go into I get the license from the state? You know which townships are pretty much doing. Is this kind of settled down? Because I remember originally, it was like you never knew what town was going to go forward with this or not. Because I was sure there was a lot of debate on the local level about this.
Yes. Now, the way the state set it up was that if a town had not made up its mind by a year ago, August, the deadline that they had set, that the default value was, yes, sure, cannabis, anywhere, any kind, any place in my town.
Oh, that's the default?
That was the default, yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask me.
Okay.
But that's what they did. And then the word spread fast.
Sure.
There's something called League of Municipalities where they all go and they all hang out and they share information. And I'm sure that was the topic of conversation there many times. And so a lot of them, almost knee-jerk reaction, opted out.
Right, because they didn't know what they're getting into, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So that gave them time to have public debate, talk among themselves, as they say, and decide what they wanted to do. Some of them have opted back in. Some of them have opted back out.
Right.
Some have changed the regulations. Some have said only cultivation, and later said, well, okay, maybe one or two retail. It's a changing environment. That's why sometimes people will come to me and say, well, I have this database of where all the towns are. And I said, well, how often do you update that? Every 20 minutes?
Every 20 minutes. Okay.
It's a changing landscape, to be sure.
Oh, so it's still in a lot of flux right now.
Less flux than there was initially, but I still hear about it once in a while.
Okay.
I was surprised recently. The town next to me had told me that they only were going to allow cultivation and only 2 licenses, and they had already given out their letters of support. So essentially they were finished, and then about 6 months ago somebody told me that they were getting support from that same town for retail. And I said,
okay.
Well, at first I thought, well, how did that happen? Then I realized, well, they changed their mind.
Right. So and it sounds to me like they're just dipping their toe and like, oh, let's try this first, see what
And they talk
impact it has.
amongst themselves, so they see how it's going in other towns. There were a few towns that initially said, wide open, yes, bring it on. You know, the Asbury Parks, the Atlantic Cities, Jersey City was another one. And naturally, people flocked there and scooped up the real estate. But now they have, again, an approval process. Some of the towns have their own application, just like the state does, where you have to fill out all of this information. In some cases, they want you to come and present in front of them, hence the need for a pitch deck, so one of the things we do. Others have regulations already in place, either pro or con or whatever, and that's why the advice I always give folks is if you're interested in what's known as a micro business license, it has to be in the town in which you live or surrounding towns. So that's where you would start. Call the mayor's office, find out what the regulations are. You're going to get an answer. You may not like the answer, but at least you'll know what you have to do. Are they open? Are they closed? And again, that's the answer you get is only for today. It may change tomorrow. So no doesn't mean no in this particular case.
Right. No means ask again tomorrow, it sounds
Exactly.
like. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. You're listening to Master Your Finances.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. We're here with Nick Scalera, and we're talking about cannabis, and I guess the different municipalities have different attitudes towards it, and that seems to be in flux even now, even though it's kind of a little bit more mature now, but there's still a lot of changes. And one of the things you said, a lot of them will want you to actually present before the town and provide what they call a pitch deck. So for those who aren't familiar with the VC world or any of these kind of operations, explain to somebody what a pitch deck is.
Sure.
And then secondarily, what typically are the towns looking for in these pitch decks?
Okay, so pitch deck is nothing more than a slide deck, typically PowerPoint slide deck, and it's a reflection of your business plan. So where your business plan, prior to the implementation in New Jersey, we do 40, 50-page business plans. New Jersey, by the way, limited to 20 pages, so we've had to figure out how to squeeze all that good stuff into 20 pages. But essentially, it's taking that business plan and including the pro forma, the profit and loss statement, and communicating it via slides. And so what investors are typically interested in, the same kinds of pitch decks that we've been making for years and years and years, even before cannabis. They want to know primarily your leadership team. That's very, very important. As the saying goes, the smart people at the track bet on the jockeys, not the horses. So the leadership team is very important to the extent that they've been in an industry allied in some degree with cannabis, so much better. If they're from another state, for example, where they've been successful in organizing, planning, operating a successful cannabis business, that's a very good thing. If they've been in another regulated industry, liquor or pharmacy or something like that, that's also a good thing. That demonstrates that they can operate within that kind of environment and be successful in it. Also, obviously, if you're going to be cultivating, there should be a master cultivator there, and et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, having not only good business skills, but also the kinds of things that are particular to the cannabis industry that you're either going to hire or have in-house security, very strict point-of-sale systems to track the product, as they say, in the back door, out the front door. The finances are very important. The break-even, how much investment it's going to take to get into the business, to make sure that, and proof that there is sufficient funds to fund the business, not only for the upfront costs, but also the carrying costs until you turn a profit. So normally what we do is we add those two numbers together, what it takes to outfit the business, very expensive inventory, for example, if you're in manufacturing or in retail, very big investment in terms of equipment and so forth if you're getting into cultivation. So that's a big expense. Plus, the first few months you're going to be running in the red, so you need to be able to cover that until you turn a profit. So the operation of the business is important in the pitch deck as well. How you're going to be operating, how you ensuring that you're going to be complying with the requirements that the state has, that you're operating at a profitable manner, that you have a good plan for training, for security, inventory control, all the normal kinds of things.
Okay, so it's pretty highly regulated, it sounds like.
Very.
Even compared to other regulated industries is what it sounds like to me.
Much more so. Much more so.
All right, so you mentioned that, I don't know if you want to touch on some of these different business plans that people set up. Like, let's say if I want to do a cultivation or if I want to do a retail, you want to explain a little bit of the differences about how those might go if I were to try to get licensed and maybe set up one of those businesses?
Sure. They just, by the way, expanded the cultivation licenses. Initially, they had limited it to 37 licenses until this past February, and then they expanded the limit. So now they will allow more cultivation licenses. But cultivation is farming. It's indoor farming. No one in New Jersey that I'm aware of is planning to do any outdoor farming. There's a good reason for that. The fact, profitability. Obviously, you can get 3-4 at least crops per year. Mm-hmm. They're very sophisticated. They have LED lighting systems that are essentially fooling the plant in many cases. They have irrigation systems. They get into nutrients. There are people called master cultivators, and they know what they're doing. Let me tell you, there are very many different kinds of strains. A lot of them from California. There are companies just in the business of creating seeds. You go from the seed to the clone, and then you in your grow facility. In many cases, then you are going to be harvesting and drying and processing in that facility, and you cannot sell in that business to consumers. You can only sell to manufacturers who do something else with the product that you're creating, or Yeah, sell to manufacturers, right?
Okay, so I cultivate it, now I sell to the manufacturer. Now,
Or the store. That's what I meant
store.
to say.
Okay.
Sell to the store.
You sell it to the store. So, well, I grow it, right? Somebody has to turn it into a product, right? So who's turning it into the product? The store does that?
Well, you can either package it yourself, you can dry it
Okay.
and have clippers,
Okay.
people who trim the plant and put it into packaging. Or there's a company actually out there that will do it for you. So they'll pick up bags of dried cannabis for you, and they do labeling and packaging and those kinds of things off-prem.
Right.
And then either will deliver it back to you or to its ultimate destination.
Okay. So what about security? I would think that if you have that much cannabis in one building, isn't that a concern, so to speak, for lack of a better word?
It is, and in fact, there are companies just in that business. So you will talk to them, and they will develop a security plan for you for a price, and then they will either implement that plan for you, or you can do it yourself, or hire somebody else to do it. But yes, and in the business plan, we will specify the entrances, the exits, the security programs. There are some of the provisions that you have to comply with in terms of has to be a gated parking area to make sure that nobody's messing with the vehicles and having them break down during a delivery or something like that. There's surveillance, inside surveillance, outside surveillance. As I said, the product themselves are tracked very carefully through something called seed to sale, where initially they have barcodes, and that barcode follows it through its entire life.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So now I've got it manufactured. I take it to the store. So that's another license, right? For the retail.
Yes.
So how does that differ a little bit from the cultivation aspect of it?
So now you can sell to consumers.
Okay.
Okay, and you can even deliver to consumers. That's also part of the provision. And by the way, delivery can be anywhere in the state. So even though a town has indicated that they do not want a cannabis business in their town, they cannot stop another cannabis business from delivering cannabis into their town.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is. And some people use that as an argument. Well, there's going to be cannabis here anyway via these delivery systems. Why not, quote, make some money from it? Because the towns do make money.
Right.
Okay. They get up to 2% back to them. So some towns are taking advantage of that. Towns that are maybe in a little lower economic situation, closed storefronts, things like that. They see this as an opportunity to get some of those stores open again, generate some revenue for the town, make it a little easier on the taxpayers.
Okay, so there is a revenue share of some kind here.
Yes.
Okay, so wow, interesting. So if the town next to me has it, then in theory it could be delivered to the town that I'm in already.
That's correct.
So that's why some of them are like, well, you might as well have a location there.
That's
you might
an
as well
argument.
Get that. Okay, I'm not saying I understand. Yeah, it's an argument basically. You could say no still, obviously.
Right.
But okay, so this retail. So you grow it, you retail it. What you had a couple other licenses in there. What other licenses?
Manufacture.
Okay.
Okay.
And how does that differ?
Well, you would get dried cannabis in the back door, and then you do something with it. You'd either create rolled products, or you could make it into tinctures. You have to be careful in New Jersey because New Jersey does not yet allow edibles per se.
I remember in Colorado they had the edibles on the lower floor, and the kids were like picking it up thinking it was candy. And
that's another issue, by the way, is packaging. So the state has indicated very strict packaging regulations to make sure that I can't say that make sure that doesn't happen, but to hopefully prevent that as much as possible.
Right.
Okay. So, but other states have beverages. They have edibles. Really, the only edible we have here are what they call lozenges, which is kind of left over from the medical program. So, kind of more like gummies. But they're tinctures, oils, that kind of thing that people will put under their tongue.
Right.
Take them that way.
Okay. So you have the growing it, right? The farming and the cultivating. You have the manufacturing, and you have the retail. You mentioned that there were some other ones as well, right?
Well, they haven't issued the regulations for those, but that's going to be distribution and wholesaling and just delivery.
Okay. Okay. So those are the main ones right now.
Yeah, I think they did the most popular ones right now. And right now, some of those other functions are really not as necessary because the industry is so new.
Do we have any sense of like how much of this has grown since the start? I know it's relatively new. I don't know if you know any rough numbers of like how.
No.
Because I mean, I just was shocked when I went like down Route 1 just one day, and all of a sudden I saw this huge line around this store that had been closed for a while. I'm like, what the heck is that? And I go, then I finally realized it was a new retail cannabis place.
Right.
I didn't. Then I go, oh, well, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
like,
Every once in a while, the COC will publish some numbers and things like that, but I don't recall any off the top of my head.
But they seem to be growing, and it seems to be
yes,
taking
very, very
hold.
popular.
And so far, do they seem to be successful, the ones that are opening?
Using that as a measure, I would
That's
say
the only
so.
one. I only know one location that I
Well,
saw. Based on the traffic, foot traffic, it seems like they're doing pretty well.
Some people have registered some concerns that they don't think it's going to be as popular as predicted.
Okay.
Time will tell. There is actually I call it a dispensary because it is medical near me, and every time I go in there, doesn't seem to be that many people.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, you never. I mean, because theories people could grow it themselves, right? Because they don't call it weed for no reason, right? So if they
Well, it's still illegal in New Jersey.
no, I know that, but I'm just saying that it's kind of like okay. I always had other ways of getting it before. Let me just point that out.
The legacy market.
Right. That's actually called the legacy market. Okay. See, I do legacy planning, but it's very different than what you're talking
I'm
about.
sure it is.
So, all right. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We're going to take a quick break.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, certified financial planner professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I am here with Nick Scalera, the founder and CEO of NJ Cannabis Consulting, and we're talking about all aspects of like what's relatively new to New Jersey, but I guess now we're in 39 states where it's for medical, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I guess recreational, somewhere in between there. We don't know. We don't know that number, but
or so.
But it's growing. I guess the trend is growing. So I think the awareness of the issue is growing. Which means I think we need to be smarter about exactly what's happening. I mean, it's here, right? So let's just, regardless of where you stand on the issue, it's something we need to manage, and we need to manage it intelligently, I think. And so I think part of the issue I have is, you talked about the legacy market before, so you said that's probably going to hang around because it's there, right? And then you're going to have the regulated market, which of course a lot of people are taking advantage of that because now they know what they're getting. It might be cost a little bit more, but at least you have a known product and things like that. Mm-hmm. And we don't really know where this is all going to level out, although we do know the issue's awareness is growing. So I think the next step is we need to get smarter about this. So what is your advice and how we kind of get down to the bottom line about what are the true pros and cons? As we start getting more data, we're going to see, well, here's the issues that we need to be concerned about for real, and here's the other issues maybe we had concerns about, but they didn't turn out to be as bad as we thought they were going to be. But there's going to be things on both sides of this where we're going to have to pay some attention to it. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, again, I think people have to be smart about it. I mentioned before the fact that at least if you go to a licensed store, you know what you're getting. There are conflicting statistics in terms of what legalization means in terms of use in the overall population with respect to children, things like that. Again, you can find statistics and studies on both sides of that argument. I guess it's going to take some more time to sort that out. But as far as education of folks that work in the industry,
right? Okay.
There are schools. There are cannabis schools, online schools, and every once in a while you see them pop up at a location a week where they'll have a training course for bud tenders. That's what they're called, not bartenders, bud tenders.
Bud tenders, okay. All right.
Bud tenders. So, for example, when you go into a retail store, you will be confronted with a bud tender.
Do I have to tell them my life story?
Well, it depends.
Okay.
If you're there for medical purposes, they'll ask you what your ailment is, and so they'll make specific recommendations both in the type of product, the strain, whether they're recommending gummies or oils or something
It's
like
a little
that.
bit like a pharmacist kind of
A
deal.
little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, right. So they have that education, and they can guide you in that endeavor. And now with adult use, same thing. You can go in and you can pretty much say, is it to help me sleep? Is it for anxiety? Do I just want to get high? I mean, I'm sure people go in just for that.
Okay.
So yes, they will advise you in that regard. And so there is quite a bit of education out there for not only that, but now some of the colleges have picked up. The one I'm most familiar with is Stockton. They have a cannabis certificate now, and some of the junior colleges now are offering some cannabis-related courses as well. And if you're just looking for information on various topics, again, it's available on many places on the internet, including the Cannabis Learning Center, something that we set up. And there's 67 different topics there. We borrowed the list of topics from Ganjapreneur. They had laid out the cannabis universe and defined 67 topics that people could be interested in, so we borrowed that. So you can go there and read educational information that folks have uploaded, typically what are known as ancillary businesses. So, for example, the people who sell LED lights that are used in the cannabis industry will have educational information there. They might have videos, they might have articles, they might have other kinds of literature illustrating how to use their lights in a cultivation situation. Okay, manufacturing companies, same thing. They'll be showing how their machines can be used to produce cannabis-related products as well. So it's a good place to go and learn. There are recipes and all kinds of other topics that are addressed as well.
Yeah, so 67 topics. I guess one that just crossed my mind, if it's what about interstate commerce?
No.
That's a no, because now you're federal, right?
Exactly.
So if you have a thing in New Jersey, you cannot go across to Delaware and talk to Pennsylvania about it.
Well, no cannabis can cross state lines according to the federal government.
Okay. Just want to be clear on that.
Oh, it's very clear. So again, that's one of the implications of the fact that it's still illegal at the federal level.
Okay. Yeah. So no, you got to stay all within the same state at this point in time, correct?
Right. So that's why, by the way, some of the gateway cities are good spots to have retail establishments, because not yet legal in Pennsylvania, adult use wise. So all of those New Jersey towns right across the river are good from a retail perspective.
So if I'm down in like the Mount Laurel area or Cherry Hill
Something like
area, you're right across from Philadelphia, so
Big population
people are
area
likely coming across the river to.
Exactly. Same thing in northern New Jersey, Jersey City, with the PATH stations and things like that.
Okay. Okay. Oh, so we're the first of the tri-state area, so to speak, to do this.
That's correct.
Okay. Wasn't aware of that. So
Yeah.
at the moment, for now, like we were the first to have the casinos, now I guess they all do. It's probably just a matter of time is what it sounds like.
New York is a little behind us, and Pennsylvania is further back still.
Okay. So what do we see kind of moving ahead from here now? Because we see like it's starting to develop. So what are you predicting as far as like the next steps, as far as what we might see? What are some of your thoughts?
All right. Well, the state has now issued quite a few licenses.
Okay.
Quite a few. And one of the types of licenses that they have been most issuing is something called a conditional license. So the conditional license means you can have the license, but until you get the approval of a town and a suitable location, you can't start your business. And when you have those, come back.
Okay.
And then you can do a conversion license to get your annual or standard license. Okay, so there are a lot of people looking for towns that will have them, looking for properties that will work for them, or a place where they can build. That has been the challenge for a lot of people. I believe 70-80% of the people went for that conditional license, which meant good to have, as we say, necessary but not sufficient.
Right.
So I have the license, but I have no place to hang it right now. Let me go find a town, and hopefully they're doing that now. There's actually a finite amount of time to do that. The state gave them, I think it was 3 or 4 months initially, but of course they had to put in a provision to allow extensions to it, because obviously a lot of those people didn't find a place.
Right.
So they're still hunting.
Okay, and that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of it's regulated by the town. So even if I found a town that was interested, I have to go do my proposal and present my pitch deck, and so they may have their own process.
That's true. And we do deal with quite a few people who will come to us and say, I have a location.
Right.
If you find somebody, point them in my direction. So we do provide that service. We provide a lot of collaboration between our clients and even people that just call. People who are looking for this, that, or the other.
Right.
When you're in the middle of it, you've been doing it for 5 years, you know a lot of people, and you run into a lot of people, and you collaborate with a lot of people, both on the telephone, the networking events. So it's still a relatively small industry.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to know somebody who does virtually everything that needs to be done. Architects, construction people, mentioned before, CPAs, attorneys, security people, packaging people. Whatever you can think of to open any kind of cannabis business, there's somebody doing it, probably many people, and we point people in that direction. Okay,
so as far as the towns go, I mean, are there certain things that they like as far as when somebody comes in? I mean, I don't know, I'm thinking like a farming, or would they want it like away from the center of town, or from a retail? I mean, do they tend to have do they favor, or does it matter which town? It just depends on the town itself.
It depends on the town. As I said, there's 565, and I think there's probably 800 different ways to do it because they keep changing their mind. So some towns have indicated preferences. They don't want it downtown. So no retail.
Right.
If you want to open and some of the manufacturing facilities can be anywhere. You wouldn't even know.
Right.
Especially there are odor mitigation systems. Again, another kind of company that we deal with all the time. Because if you're opening a consumption lounge, you have to put essentially a bus on the roof to handle the HVAC requirements for that kind of location.
Oh, wow.
So again, the towns will specify, we do want this, we don't want that, or only a certain number of them, or only in that area. So they hold all the cards. So it's whatever they want, that's what you're going to have to do. As Hyman Roth said, this is the business we have chosen. So you have to follow the rules of the town.
Okay, all right. So any of the other changes you see maybe happen in the future as far as like the opportunities for somebody that might be interested in being involved in it on a business side?
To us, it was very seasonal. And by that I mean, this opened up for applications a year ago, December. And people started coming to us 3 or 4 months before that. Right. Because as long as I've been in this business, I've been telling people, don't wait. Right. Start now. Give yourself as much time as possible. So we started doing applications again almost a year and a half ago, at least 15, 16 months. But I think most of the people who were going to file have filed. Okay. That doesn't mean that they have their location and they still don't need to do their conversion, or they don't need investment. Or the other thing we do is marketing plans as well. Right. And now we do consulting on the operations side, so we can help them open their business and things like that. So from our perspective, we've kind of moved down the food chain a little bit. Right. In that it's less getting you your license, and now it's opening, starting, operating your business. We can help you with that too. And now there might be a little bit of competition, because it sounds like you've got more than one. I mean, now we're getting into that second stage where you've got a pretty good infrastructure there, and now we're going to see whether it works from a business perspective long term, right? As you pointed out earlier, it's hard to tell because we don't really know, and a lot of players are coming on the field at the same time, and this has been a very interesting concept and conversation. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about. Any final words before we sign off today? No, certainly. My wife was right. I have plenty of interesting stories. Absolutely. Well, Nick, appreciate you coming on. You've been listening to Master Your Finances. You have a wonderful day.
That was this week's episode of Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Tune in every Sunday at 9 a.m. to expand your knowledge in building and managing your wealth. Missed an episode? No worries. You can subscribe to a free weekly episode of Master Your Finances to listen to on your favorite podcasting platform. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider offers continuing studies programs for adults who need flexibility. Want to add new skills to your resume? Take a continuing studies course at Rider University.